Okay, hi everyone. Welcome back to the AKIDS Symposium. With us today we have Elysia, who is a speech and language therapist over here at AKIDS, practicing in Singapore and as well as fully registered with the AHPC as a speech therapist and a full supervisor. She works with children and youth, diagnosing and treating a range of disorders such as early speech and language development from 18 months on, Autism Spectrum Disorder, social communication difficulties, and stuttering. Today, she'll be sharing with us developing language in children. And without further ado, let's have Elysia take it away.
Thanks, Wayne, for the introduction. Okay, good morning, everyone. Hold on. Okay, thank you very much for joining this webinar. Today, I'll be talking about language for life, developing language in children. Okay, these are the session objectives for today. So you'll learn about being able to identify components of language, to know when children start developing language and learning language, understanding the importance of language in schooling life, and learn about what the research finds about multilingualism, which is really applicable to our multicultural society here in Singapore, to know the skills needed for school, and then your role, the parents' role in language learning. Brief introduction about myself. I am Elysia. I am a speech therapist. I studied speech and language sciences in the UK and now fully registered with the AHPC here in Singapore. Prior to joining private practice, I was in the hospital for about 7 years, and then I had a son and then decided to take it easy a little bit. So we moved to private practice, and now I see children starting from 18 months. I also teach part-time at NUS for the master's program. Okay, let's dive right in. So the first part, we're going to learn about what does language consist of. So everybody learns language receptively, and then we use it expressively. So receptive language and expressive language. Receptive language is the understanding of language. So what you hear, and can you make sense of it? And understanding needs to happen first before we use our language. So children are the same. They need to understand what they're hearing first before they can learn to talk and express themselves. And how do we know that they're understanding? It's when they can start to follow instructions, first spoken, and then later on in school, they start to follow written directions. Okay, expressive language is how we use words to express ourselves. So we start really simply from learning single words, and then we learn to form longer and longer sentences, and then we tell stories. When do children start developing language? So as you can see, right from birth, 0 to 3 months, receptive language and expressive language are starting to come out. Let's talk about receptive language first. So right from birth, children start to turn to you when you speak. They calm down when they hear familiar voices. And then this development continues, and around about 12 months, 1 year of age, you suddenly realize that they can recognize names of familiar objects. So like, point your eyes, where's the phone, the door. They respond to requests such as give it to mommy, and then they can respond to questions. So if you ask them, do you want some more? They may not have the word, but they may gesture, they may nod, yes. So that's the understanding whatever you're saying. And development continues. So about 3 to 4 years old, they start to be able to understand who, what, where questions. And then a 4 to 5-year-old should understand nearly everything that is said to them at home, in school. Okay. So then expressive language, again, right from birth, they are practicing their sounds, they are cooing, they have different cries that you recognize. And slowly the sounds change to babbling, where they put consonants and vowels together. And then after that, it slowly changes, and they learn so much. And by 12 months, their first words come out. And by about 24 months, 2 years of age, they start to put the words together, and then they can even ask simple questions like, where ball? Or where mommy? At about 2 to 3 years old, vocabulary is expanding and exploding, and family members can start to understand the child more. And 3 to 4 years old, sentences are longer. They start to tell short stories, so they can tell you what's happened at school. They can talk about their interests, and unfamiliar people can start to understand a little bit better. And 4 to 5 years old, even more long, detailed sentences. They tell a story, like maybe we went to the zoo, but we had to come back early because Sally wasn't feeling well. And most sounds by this age are quite clear, except for the S sound, the R sound, and the TH sound. TH sound, we don't really use it in Singlish, but yeah, if they do, it's not very clear. Okay, so when we talk about expressive language, we also listen out for speech sounds. So intelligibility is the term that we use to describe how clear a child is speaking. So this is a very recent study by Husta et al. 2021, and they looked at objective adult ratings on a child's speech clarity rather than the subjective parent estimate. So around about 2 years, 7 months, a child would be 50% intelligible to an unfamiliar adult listener. When they become older, so 4 years, 1 month, maybe 76% intelligible. And then by 6 years, 11 months, they are 90% intelligible. The researchers also did say to bear in mind that the variation between children is quite large. So they may develop at different rates, at different speeds. So when we talk about child speech, what is normal and when should you be worried? Let's talk about late talkers. Okay, so developmental specialists have coined the term late talking if a child has a spoken vocabulary of fewer than 50 words at the age of 2. Typical children have about 260 words by this age. And late talking may be a sign for speech and language difficulties that fall within the clinical range. Bear in mind that all children will sometimes misunderstand what's being said to them. As they're learning to speak, they may jumble up sentences, put words in different places, and as they're learning sounds as well, sometimes their speech sounds and syllables can end up in the wrong places. That's normal. What is not normal is stuttering. A child having a hoarse voice, a very rough sounding voice, and having no interest in communicating. So they're quite poor eye contact. They echo back what you say to them. So if you say, "Good morning, Sally," the child may say back, "Good morning, Sally." So that's something that that is not within the normal, typical developmental range. Okay, so language in schooling life. Let's talk about, okay, there's a little typo on this slide. So it's meant to say importance of receptive language. Okay, so for receptive language, understanding is really important if you want to have successful interactions. It's key to having a reciprocal interaction between two people. If a child does not understand what you're saying, they may not respond to you and they come across as being rude, or they may just answer something completely inappropriate. Understanding words at different levels is, as we're learning language, we first understand single words, and then we understand sentences, and then longer narratives. So this is our reading comprehension skills, which starts right from primary 1. They read something, they understand it, they answer a question. And it just increases in complexity as schooling ages go on. Okay, understanding different concepts. So terms like big and small, we use it in maths, hot and cold in science. So to be able to understand different concepts will mean that they will be able to follow instructions better. They can carry out projects well. Otherwise, they may have difficulties with that front and follow games as well. Inferential comprehension. So this is, you may hear of the term reading between the lines. So it's quite similar. So you read something, you form a presumption about what has happened based on prior knowledge or prior experiences. So if someone says to you, "I've just been on holiday and I got a 10," you may then assume that it was really hot on their holiday, and then you can expand on that conversation. You can ask another question, was the heat bearable? So these are things that will help in friendships formation, just following conversation, responding to people appropriately. Okay, grammar are rules of the English language. So syntax is how a sentence should be structured in English. And different languages have different syntaxes. So for English, we have subject, verb, object. The boy is kicking the ball, that kind of sentence structure. Morphology refers to word formations. So for example, jump is present tense, and if you add an ed, jumped is past tense. So for a child to learn all these, understand what all these skills will be quite crucial when they start school, and to be able to access the curriculum. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the importance of expressive language. So again, expressive language is the spoken and written output of language. It is the process of formulating ideas, putting them into words and phrases, and then following the society grammatical and semantic rules. So if a child has limited vocabulary, they don't know what words to use, they may have difficulty expressing their thoughts and feelings successfully. So word formation, so they're not very sure how to use plurals, how to use tense, prefixes, suffixes, using negatives, and they have quite limited use of grammatical markers, then they will have difficulties using complex sentences. Their sentences might be quite simple. They may give wrong instructions, so they're not using the right plural form or tenses. It can be difficult to understand what they are trying to say. And if they have difficulties with sentence formation, so syntax, then it is really difficult for them to express their thoughts, whether it's in spoken language or written language. So this is your composition writing. Using different types of clauses is expected of them as they progress through their school. And narrative difficulties is difficulties telling stories. So we know that from 4 or 5 years old, they start to tell stories. And then as they enter primary school, they are expected to write things down, follow logical fashion, so beginning, middle, end. So children with narrative difficulties may have really short sentences, very simple sentences. They may use general terms like that thing, stuff, because they don't know how to express themselves. And their stories may have doesn't really follow the beginning, middle, end. It may be a beginning and then there's a lot of things happening and then the end. So it may not be as orderly as it should be. That could be a reason that difficulties in the expressive language could be a reason that they are unable to write a cohesive story with detail. Okay, multilingualism, which is really applicable to our society here in Singapore because all of us are bilingual or supposed to be bilingual. I found a really nice quote by Nelson Mandela. So if you talk to a man in a language he understands, it goes to his head. If you talk to a man in his own language, that goes to his heart. So it is really nice that we are multilingual, bilingual. What does the research find? The research says that being multilingual or bilingual does not cause language confusion. There is no evidence to suggest that bilingual children develop at a slower rate compared to monolingual peers. In fact, there is increased variation in speech production. And another positive is nearly all studies show that there's a transfer of phonological and language structures. So overall, having more than one language or learning more than one language will be beneficial to the child. There are certain instances where we, as therapists, we would advise the parent maybe to focus more on one language compared to the other. So we want good competency in one language rather than average competency in 2 languages. And that's down to the individual. School readiness skills. Okay, So before the child starts school, we would want to prepare them with these foundational skills of pre-reading, pre-writing, and pre-mathematical skills. Once they have these skills, it would be much easier for the learning process to occur than a child who does not have these skills. So I'm going to focus a bit on pre-reading skills today. So print awareness. Print awareness is understanding that there are letters, and letters form words, and words have meaning. Motivation to read is the child's curiosity to decode words, understand what does this word say, how does it sound, what does it mean. That's really key to wanting to read more. Listening comprehension skills are really important. So that's listening to a story, understanding it, being able to summarize what they just heard, being able to ask questions about it, answer questions about it. Letter knowledge would be understanding that capital letters and small letters are different. They're used in different instances and when to use it. And then phonological awareness, the last one is words can be broken down into different sounds. So for cat, you can break it down into k, a, t. Okay, so we'll go through some activities that you can do to encourage letter recognition in children. So as you're out and about, you can point out environmental print, road signs. You can go to supermarket, look at cereal boxes, anything that they're interested in. It's good to read to them and talk to them about the words. Hold on. Okay. Sharing rhyming books. So there are simple books out there where there's a lot of rhyme in it, and it's just to teach the children some rhyme and rhythm. After reading the book, you can pick out different words so you can rhyme together. It can be real words or it can be nonsense words, but the key is just to focus on the skill of rhyming. Letter hunt would be, for example, you can take their name, for example, and then maybe find the same letters in a magazine, a newspaper, on a cereal box, so that they are just more aware of what letters are in things that they're interested in. You can play with plastic or wooden letters, so you can make groups out of them. Like, can you find all the letters with straight lines? Can you find ones with curves? Can you find the letters of your name? Can you find the letters that sound like a p? Things like that. Baking letters together using bread dough, cookie dough is quite fun, because then as you do it together, you can talk about the different sounds. You can talk about the letters that make up their name or make up things that they're interested in, and then you can eat the best part. Forming letters with different materials, you can use, this is more like a sensory activity, so you can use things around the house, cotton balls, noodles, dry things like rice, and just forming letters and just having fun with it. And then scavenger hunt is maybe for kids who are a little bit older, where they can look around the house for certain letters, certain objects that start the letter T, for example. Okay, your role in their child's language learning journey. So number one, engagement. Always just be with your child, engage your child, talk about things that they are doing, seeing, hearing, and then respond to them with enthusiasm so that they know that you're listening. Number two, be natural. So using the same tone that you would talk to anyone, just make it part of the interaction. Just be really natural. Progress should be steady. Some children learn language fast, some slow, but the key thing is just to be aware of if there is progress, whether it's fast or slow, it doesn't matter as long as there is progress. Reading stories from an early age, so we all know that habits take a long time to form, so it's best to start early. Have fun, and all of us, even adults, we learn so much better when we're having fun. So we can use toys that interest the children or topics of their interest and just teach them words, meanings, everything around what they're interested in, and they will learn so much quicker when they're having fun. And the last part is to seek help when needed. So sometimes parents are a little bit hesitant to seek professional advice. And this may be because they've heard like, oh, maybe your child's just slow, it takes time, or your child is too young to be assessed. But for speech therapists, we assess babies and toddlers from 18 months onwards. And the best time to seek help is when you as a parent feel concerned. So that's the end of my webinar. I'm very happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you so much, Elysia. If anyone has any questions, you just type it down in the meeting chat below. If no one has any questions, I actually have a question of my own. Are there any screen time or TV shows that would, actually help a child who is not speaking a lot, help them develop language by maybe perhaps through learning from watching?
Okay, so nowadays it's really difficult to avoid the screen, and research has shown that if your child is below 2 years old, there should not be any screen time. But the way that society goes, sometimes we can't avoid it. So there's no specific program that I would recommend, but what we normally would tell parents is that if your child needs to watch something, then interact with them about it. So you can sit next to them, talk to them, like what they're seeing, what they're hearing outside. You can sing the same songs as you've heard. Just try to interact as much as you can with whatever they are looking at.
I also have one more question. Just wondering if flashcards actually help to develop language as well.
Flashcards, a lot of flashcards are like single nouns or single verbs, and it's not a bad thing, but it would be just teaching them what picture to word knowledge. So it is more helpful if you use those words in a sentence as well, or when they're interacting with things outside. So if you see a ball, talk about the ball, describe features about it, rather than just showing the flashcard. I have real life interactions and experiences as well.
Okay, we have a question from Stacy in the chat. She asks, I would like to introduce Chinese and English to her 1-year-old, and however, she speaks both languages, but not her spouse. So she was wondering if she should change the language every day so as not to confuse the child or not.
So again, the research has shown that it doesn't cause confusion. And in Singapore, as your child goes to school, maybe 18 months onwards, they will be exposed to a lot of English as well in school, and some Mandarin. Right now, you're speaking Chinese, and then maybe your spouse is speaking English. That's okay. We want to expose them to a lot of different sounds, and they will work out what the meanings are as you speak to them more in their activities. So for example, let's just use the same one as a ball. You can say 球, 这个是球, this is a ball. So after hearing it multiple times, they will start to understand the two different languages.
If not, let's thank Elysia for her time here today. It's been really insightful learning about child language development.
Thank you everyone for tuning in, and any questions you can always email me.